He went from flipping water bottles in his suburban bedroom to making millions of dollars before he could even vote. He transformed from a harmless kid with a viral hobby into one of the most infamous and polarizing creators on the internet. But his relentless, insatiable chase for clout, for views at any cost, led him down a dark path, paved with a string of reckless, arrogant, and genuinely dangerous decisions that threatened to burn his entire digital empire to the ground. We're not just talking about controversy, we're talking about high-stakes lawsuits, platform-wide bans from his primary sources of income, the loss of massive six-figure sponsorships, and a brutal public breakup that was broadcast live for the world to see, exposing the ugly, transactional truth lurking behind the glossy influencer fantasy. So how did one of YouTube's most financially successful teenage prodigies become one of its most reviled and cautionary tales? Before the flashy Lamborghinis, the sprawling Miami mansions, and the ever-present entourage of imposing bodyguards, there was a very different Jack Doherty. To truly comprehend the staggering depth of his fall from grace, you first have to understand the innocent heights from which it all began. The year was 2016. The digital landscape for creators was in a state of flux. The 6-second video app, Vine, was in its final days, and its user base was migrating, searching for the next big thing. Into this void stepped a fresh-faced, energetic 13-year-old from Long Island, armed with nothing more than a smartphone and a half-full plastic water bottle. His initial goal was disarmingly simple: to make it land upright. After posting a few tentative warm-up videos, learning the strange physics of the flip, he uploaded the one that would light the fuse on his entire career, a video titled, "I Flipped All of These." In it, he flips everything he could get his hands on: bottle, toothpaste, even a battery. It was a perfect storm of timing and trend. The bottle flipping craze was an inexplicable, global phenomenon, sweeping through schoolyards and office buildings alike. Jack, with his boyish charm and genuine excitement, became the de facto poster child for the movement. His early content was the epitome of family-friendly, wholesome entertainment. He filmed elaborate trick shots, performed trampoline parkour in his backyard, and created goofy, light-hearted skits with his friends. He was the quintessential relatable kid next door, the kind of person viewers felt they knew, who just happened to strike the YouTube jackpot. The growth was explosive and almost immediate. Within a single year, he was giving interviews, confidently telling reporters that he was already earning a six-figure income. By the tender age of 15, he was publicly claiming to have become a self-made millionaire. It was the absolute embodiment of the new American dream for Gen Z, a teenager who had masterfully turned a fleeting viral trend into a stable, lucrative career before he could even legally get behind the wheel of a car. He was invited on national television, he collaborated with some of the biggest YouTubers in the world, and he methodically built a loyal, dedicated following of millions of young fans who looked up to him. He had, by all objective measures, achieved the ultimate dream. But trends, by their very nature, are ephemeral. As the bottle-flipping craze inevitably died down, Jack was confronted with the single most terrifying question for any trend-based creator. What comes next? How do you maintain momentum when the very thing that made you famous is no longer relevant? He could have searched for another wholesome trend, another positive challenge to conquer. He didn't. Instead, he pivoted hard into a new and dangerous world of pranks, provocation, and public disruption that would sow the seeds of his own spectacular downfall. The transformation was gradual, almost unnoticeable at first, and then it happened all at once. The clean-cut, family-friendly, bottle-flipping kid image started to feel restrictive, small, and, most importantly, less profitable. He had a brief and largely forgettable stint with Jake Paul's infamous influencer incubator Team 10, a content house notorious for its internal drama and for rewarding outrageous behavior with views and notoriety. It seems that during his time there, Jack learned a new, cynical lesson about the modern internet. The algorithm, the mysterious force that governed his career, no longer seemed to want trick shots or innocent fun. It craved conflict, drama, and raw human confrontation. So Jack, ever the savvy creator, adapted his strategy to feed the beast. The innocent challenges of his past were systematically replaced with a new, more abrasive style: public nuisance pranks. His new content formula was brutally simple, yet disturbingly effective. Walk into a public space like a Walmart, a Target, or a quiet library. Be as loud, obnoxious, and disruptive as humanly possible, and then wait for an unsuspecting member of the public to inevitably snap. He would blast deafening air horns in silent study areas, stage loud, fake arguments in crowded checkout lines, or deliberately invade people's personal space, all while the cameras were rolling, patiently waiting for the moment of confrontation that would serve as the video's climax. It was a form of low-grade psychological warfare disguised as comedy, and from a purely analytical standpoint, it worked spectacularly. The angrier the public got, the more views he racked up. The more people screamed at him, the higher his videos trended. Then came a new, defining, and ultimately menacing element of his content: the bodyguards. As his pranks grew more aggressive and the public's reactions became more heated, he began to surround himself with a team of huge professional security guards, most famously a man known as King Kong. On paper, their purpose was for his protection. In reality, they became active props and escalators in his videos. Their sheer physical presence transformed the dynamic of every stunt. Suddenly, angry store managers and frustrated shoppers weren't just confronting a cocky, camera-wielding teenager. They were facing a literal wall of muscle, which only served to crank up the tension, heighten the fear, and create even more dramatic. As Jack's fame skyrocketed and his bank account swelled, so too did his ego. The already blurry line between a provocative prank and outright malicious harassment completely evaporated. The bodyguard incidents began to escalate, showing that things were rapidly spiraling out of control. His security team was no longer just a passive, intimidating presence in the background. They were getting physically involved. The most infamous and damning moment of this era occurred at a Halloween party in October 2023. During a live stream on the platform Kick, a verbal spat broke out between Jack and another partygoer, a man named Chase Gardella. In footage that would be endlessly replayed and analyzed, Jack's bodyguard, King Kong, was caught on camera viciously punching Gardella in the face, knocking him backward. The immediate reaction from other attendees was one of shock and horror. Fellow influencer Corinna Kopf, who was present at the scene, was filmed screaming at the bodyguard in disbelief. "What is wrong with you?" But Jack's response wasn't one of concern or remorse. It was the cold, calculated response of a content creator who had just struck gold. He immediately clipped the video of the assault, packaged it, and posted it across his social media platforms with the brazenly callous caption, "My security just knocked out a guy live on my Kick." When faced with initial criticism, his excuse was simple and dismissive. Context: they were pressing us. This was not an isolated incident. It was the clearest example of a disturbing and repeating pattern. In February 2024, the consequences became tangible when Chase Gardella filed a formal lawsuit against both Jack Doherty and his bodyguard, citing assault and battery. Gardella's lawyer issued a statement to TMZ, calling the incident a disgusting, unprovoked assault on a young man by a person who is supposed to be a trained professional. The court documents later included even more damning allegations, claiming that Jack and his bodyguard had actively earned money by posting and monetizing the video of the assault itself. Simultaneously, Jack had migrated much of his operation to the less regulated Wild West streaming platform known as Kick. There, freed from the stricter content guidelines of YouTube, his behavior got even more extreme. His streams became a relentless, chaotic feed of public altercations, entitled tirades, and an ever-present sense of impending violence. His behavior grew so notoriously bad that he ended up on an episode of Dr. Phil, where he was confronted with clips of his own worst moments. He sat there smirking and making flippant excuses, appearing to a mainstream audience as nothing more than a spoiled, profoundly disrespectful, and out-of-control kid. Alongside this escalating aggression, he was relentlessly flexing his immense wealth. His content became a gaudy showcase of material excess. It was all McLarens, Lamborghinis, and a waterfront Miami mansion that he rented for a reported $55,000 a month. He constantly bragged about his income and exorbitant spending to his young, impressionable audience, carefully curating an image of untouchable, limitless success. But in reality, he was living on a precarious mountain of enormous expenses, a lifestyle funded entirely by a career that was growing more toxic and unstable by the day. The foundation of his empire was cracking under the strain, and soon it would all come crashing down in the most public and spectacular way possible. Every dramatic downfall has a singular, crystallizing moment, the point of no return where everything changes. For Jack Doherty, that moment arrived with screeching tires and shattering fiberglass on October 5th, 2024. On the slick, rain-soaked asphalt of the Florida Turnpike. He was, as usual, live streaming his life on Kick, positioned behind the wheel of his prized McLaren supercar. The weather was poor. It was raining heavily, and the roads were dangerously slick. And Jack, the man in control of the high-powered vehicle, wasn't paying attention to the road. His own stream provided the damning evidence, capturing him repeatedly looking down at his phone, his eyes darting back and forth as he read messages from his live chat. What happened next was not just tragic, but crushingly predictable. In the video, you can hear the distinct sound of the engine revving as he likely presses the accelerator, and then the car suddenly loses control on the wet surface. The McLaren hydroplaned and slammed violently into a guardrail, the impact utterly destroying the entire front end of the six-figure vehicle. In the chaotic, disorienting seconds immediately following the crash, Jack's first instinct wasn't to check on his own safety or that of his passenger. His cameraman and friend, Michael, was visibly injured, bleeding from a gash on his head. But instead of offering aid or comfort, Jack was pathologically focused on the camera, his voice urgent as he instructed Michael to keep filming the scene, to capture the bloody aftermath for the stream. The internet's reaction was swift and brutal. This wasn't a prank that could be debated. It was a clear-cut case of dangerous, reckless behavior that could have easily killed someone. Community Notes, a feature on X, formerly Twitter, used to fact-check misleading posts, began appearing on his own posts about the crash, bluntly stating, Jack was using his phone and driving at an excessive speed in rain, which led to him crashing his McLaren. The real-world consequences hit fast and hard. Kick, the very platform that had profited from his chaos, quickly banned him for promoting illegal activity, a serious violation. The Florida Highway Patrol cited him for his reckless driving. And then, the financial bleeding began in earnest. For many brands, his behavior had long been a liability, but the crash was the final, unforgivable straw. No reputable company wanted to be associated with a creator who not only endangered human lives through his negligence, but seemed to instinctively want to monetize the tragedy for content. Reports surfaced in the following months that he had lost several major lucrative sponsorship deals in the direct aftermath of the crash. In the span of just a few seconds of inattention, he had transformed himself from a merely problematic influencer into a total pariah. After a brief unban, demonstrating the platform's initial reluctance to deplatform a top streamer, Kick was forced to ban him again, just a few months later in January 2025, after he live-streamed his involvement in a chaotic street brawl. The McLaren crash had set off a catastrophic chain reaction, and the next pillar of his carefully constructed life to collapse would be his personal one. The spectacular public implosion of Jack's career was matched by an equally dramatic private one. For 2 years, his relationship with fellow influencer McKinley Richardson had been a central pillar of his content. To his millions of followers, they were presented as an aspirational power couple, living a life of luxury and adventure in their Miami mansion. But behind the curated vlogs and smiling thumbnails, a very different and much darker story was playing out. In March 2025, the relationship completely fell apart, not in a private conversation, but live on stream, for their entire audience to witness in real time. The police were called to Jack's Miami home to mediate and help McKinley retrieve her personal belongings after a volatile argument. The live stream captured a frantic and seemingly panicked Jack, who yelled into his camera, "This bitch used me for fucking money," for all his viewers to hear. Meanwhile, McKinley could be heard telling the police officers off camera that she was leaving because he had allegedly threatened her, a serious claim that Jack vehemently denied on the stream. The breakup was not just a personal heartbreak, it was an immediate and devastating business disaster. In a moment of unguarded panic, Jack himself admitted on the stream that McKinley had become his main source of revenue, likely referring to the content they created together. He seemed less heartbroken by the loss of his partner and more terrified by the impending collapse of his bottom line. In the weeks and months that followed the split, McKinley began to speak out, providing her side of the story. In podcast interviews and public statements, she described what she characterized as a deeply manipulative and controlling environment. She claimed that Jack had relentlessly pressured her into creating adult-oriented content, despite her initial and repeated hesitation. She alleged that he had framed this demand as a condition for their relationship to continue, effectively creating an ultimatum. She tearfully recalled a specific, chilling conversation where an employee of Jack's allegedly told her, "Jack really wants you to start," and he said that there's no reason for you guys to be together if you're not helping. Her powerful and detailed testimony painted a disturbing picture of a partner who was pathologically obsessed with content and revenue, often at the expense of her own comfort and well-being. This was a devastating blow to his already tarnished reputation. The narrative around him shifted dramatically. He was no longer just an annoying prankster or a reckless driver. In the eyes of many, he was now being labeled as a toxic and manipulative figure. Other prominent streamers and many of his former friends began to publicly distance themselves from him. The vast reservoir of public goodwill that he had so carefully built up as the charming, bottle-flipping kid was completely gone, replaced by a permanent image of a toxic, reckless, and exploitative personality. Jack Doherty's entire brand, his very identity as a creator, was meticulously built on the appearance of being impossibly rich. The fleet of supercars, the waterfront mansion, the designer clothes, the extravagant trips, it was all part of a carefully constructed image. But it was an image propped up by a constant, torrential flow of cash that was now, for the first time in his career, beginning to dry up, and fast. The loss of his major sponsorship deals following the McLaren crash was a monumental blow. In the high-stakes world of influencer marketing, a creator's reputation is their primary currency, and Jack's was now radioactive. At the very same time, getting permanently banned from Kick twice severed his main stage for daily content and cut off a direct, reliable paycheck from subscriptions and donations. His YouTube viewership also reportedly began to dip, as a significant portion of the audience grew weary of the relentless drama and toxicity. Fewer views on YouTube translates directly to less advertising revenue, squeezing yet another of his income streams. All of this was happening while he remained shackled to the expenses of an absolutely insane lifestyle. That reported $55,000 a month rent for his Miami mansion and the hefty monthly payments on a fleet of depreciating supercars don't simply vanish when the income does. With his revenue streams tanking, that massive overhead transformed from a symbol of success into a heavy financial anchor, dragging him down. Now, any claims that he went completely broke are likely an exaggeration. As of 2025, his net worth is still estimated to be somewhere in the range of $2 to $5 million, although some reports on influencer net worth vary widely and are notoriously difficult to verify. While that is still a significant amount of money for anyone, it represents a colossal step down from his peak earnings, and more importantly, may not be enough to sustain his outgoings for long. The days of casually buying new supercars as content props were definitively over. In a stark and humbling reversal of his entire persona, he was seen on his sporadic live streams actively asking his fans for donations, a massive and telling contrast to the untouchable millionaire image he had spent years cultivating. Unproven accusations of his involvement in a cryptocurrency pump and dump scheme also began to swirl online, adding to the sense of financial desperation. He hadn't lost every single dollar, but the glittering empire he so proudly and arrogantly flaunted was visibly crumbling before the public's eyes. The money, once the ultimate symbol of his success, had now become the most potent symbol of his failure. So the story of Jack Doherty is a wild, turbulent ride through the modern landscape of fame, money, and monumental mistakes. His journey raises a lot of difficult but important questions about the nature of internet fame and where personal responsibility fits into the chaotic ecosystem of online content creation. What do you think? Is there any path to redemption for a creator like Jack? Or is the damage to his reputation and career permanent? Can someone who built an entire brand on chaos and public disruption ever truly change their ways? Or is the persona now inseparable from the person? Let us know what you think down in the comments below. At the end of the day, Jack Doherty's story is, above all else, a profound cautionary tale for the digital age. It's a story about a kid who was handed everything he ever wanted: fame, fortune, and influence, and then systematically tore it all down, one bad decision at a time. He started his career as the wholesome embodiment of the YouTube dream, a testament to how passion and timing could change a life overnight. But the very same engine that fueled his meteoric rise, the relentless, desperate chase for views at any and all costs, also became the engine of his own destruction. He made the critical error of confusing getting attention with earning respect, and operated under the toxic assumption that any scandal, no matter how damaging, was good for business in the long run. He failed to grasp the fundamental distinction that while online clicks and comments can feel ephemeral and fake, the consequences of of his actions in the real world are anything but. A lawsuit isn't a YouTube comment you can delete. A near-fatal car crash isn't a prank you can laugh off later. His downfall wasn't the result of one single mistake. It was a slow burn, fueled by years of unchecked arrogance, a profound disconnect from reality, and an environment that rewarded his worst impulses with fame and money. He meticulously built a kingdom founded on chaos, and then had the audacity to act surprised when he was the one who ultimately got burned. And while he still commands an audience of millions of subscribers, his name is no longer synonymous with aspirational success, but with controversy, scandal, and a legacy of self-inflicted wounds. Ultimately, his story serves as a stark and enduring warning to every aspiring creator out there. Fame is temporary, money can disappear in an instant, but once you completely shatter your reputation, it can be lost forever.
I know you're not following what I'm saying anyway, right? That's okay, that doesn't matter. The real question is this: is all this legal? Absolutely fucking not.